Here we go again. I'm going to bore you with a plane video. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. We are working on a low-angle jointer plane. Now, I just put out a video this last weekend going kind of a quick overview of building this whole thing all in one video, about 14 minutes long. It was a collaboration with Rex Kruger, and I had a lot of fun with that. And this is a beautiful plane to have. But I really want to go into detail because this is something that scares a lot of people. How do you cut this out without laminating it? Because we've gotten so used to planes that are laminated. They're designed to do that because of power tools, but the traditional method is just to cut a hole out and not have to cut the sides off. How exactly do you do that? That scares a lot of people. And I want to take a detailed video and go into this step by step and create this whole plane over the series of 3 or 4 videos and really have a lot of detail so that anyone can follow along with this. Anyone can do this. If you're expecting perfection in your first try, you're not going to get it. But you're going to have a usable plane that works. And it's not that difficult. It's something that most people with a few months of practice with hand tools can fairly easily cut out, as long as you know the steps and you know where to cut and where not to cut and how to draw out the lines. It's a fairly simple process. Now, I do have plans with all of the angles and dimensions and drawings, so if you want to create this yourself, you can actually go and get the exact angles and dimensions that I used to create this one. I'll have those on my website. There's a link down in the description and up in the cards. So today we're going to be focusing on roughing out the escapement here. How do we actually start hogging off this area and laying out the marks and knowing where to cut and how much is too much and where do we go for it? And we're going to be kind of going into the basics of cutting out this hole here. In the future videos, we're going to be then going into how to detail it, how to create the wedge, and how to make this all fit together. But today I just want to go through the basics of cutting out the rough opening of the shape and hogging out the majority of the material. So let's dive in and take a look at it. So for this plane, I'm going to be using this massive block of hard maple. This was given to me by a friend a while ago. I figured it would make a fairly good plane. Another thing you want to look at is the end here. You can see the growth rings. This was the outside, the bark. You want the bark to be towards the bottom of the plane. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting off a chunk here that will be the body of the plane. So it'll be a little over 1.5 inches by about 1.5 inches high here. And I'm going to take a chunk right out of the end of that to make my plane body. The other thing is you can see this is quarter sawn, so on this surface here you can see all the rays from the hard maple. That makes the plane look pretty, but also means that it's a very stable piece of wood, very nice clean straight grain. If you look on this surface, there are very few grain lines that you can see, and that means that it's following the grain really nicely. You can see one grain line runs out here and another one runs out over here. So it's a fairly flat piece of wood. So the first thing I want to do is smooth out and flatten this top surface. I'm going to do that in reference to the one smooth side that I have on this blank, so that I know that this top flat surface is my reference surface for how this all comes together. Now that I have a reference edge to this, I actually want to bring in the marking gauge. I have it set to 2 inches, and I'm going to put a line all the way around this at 2 inches, and that is what I'm going to be cutting down. So just like that, we'll go all the way around on the end grain, on the face grain, and then I'll come back in and cut this out. So to cut this on the line, I could use a big handsaw, but I have this Roubeau style frame saw that's just too much fun. So I'll just set that on there and cut it down. So I'm cutting through a little over 2.5 inches of hard maple. Take me a couple minutes, but as long as I tighten this up, actually, it should actually work pretty well. So let's cut it down. Now my saw cut wasn't quite as accurate as I want, so I have a little bit of a ridge here to get rid of. But that's not too much of a problem. I stay away from the line fairly well. So we're just going to come down to that, try and keep this flat and square. Use some winding sticks and make sure that this is nice surface, because this will be the top of the plane, so the mouth will be somewhere right around here. Now in the plans, I have the plane being 13 inches long, but this block is almost 20 inches long, and I think, I'm going to make a joiner instead. A little bit longer plane is something I don't have. I have a short, low-angle block plane, and then I have my jack, but to have a little bit longer, almost a jointer, I think I'm going to deal with that. So the first thing I want to do is actually wrap this on tape, and I want to have identifiers. This is my bottom, this is my reference side, and this is my top. This side over here has not been planed smooth. I don't worry about it. I'm just focusing on these 3 sides. The first thing I want to do is mark the front of the mouth. So this is the nose of the plane, and I'm going to put a mark here. I don't care what this distance is. I really don't have any matter. As long as there's enough space up front for my hand to go for pushing, that's all I care about. So in reference, it's somewhere around like 4.25 inches in from the end. And if you do want all these measurements and angles that I'm going to be putting on here, I will have a link to the plans in my description so you can see those exactly. But I'm just going to lay them all out here with what I have for them. So using a protractor, I'm going to set my bevel gauge to 30 degrees because that will be the bed angle of this plane. Ultra low angle, 30 degrees. Once I have that locked on, then I want to create the bed. Now here's the back of the mouth, here's the front of the mouth. The back here with the bed is going to extend all the way down. So I'm going to set this on here, and I'm going to line it up with my tick mark on the outside right here. Slide the bevel gauge in until it touches the knife, lock everything in place, and then draw that line. This is a very, very important line. This is the line you follow for everything. And make sure that lines up here, and then it comes out here. So this is the back of my mouth. So I'll grab the square, I'll put it with that line I just created where it pops out here. This is the back of the mouth. The front of the mouth is 3/16 forward. So I'm going to make a mark right here. And if anything, I want this mouth to be a little bit smaller. I can always open it up, but I can't always make it bigger. So if I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of making the mouth a little smaller, which is basically what we're going to end up doing. We're going to make it so that the blade cannot stick all the way through. And then we'll come back and adjust that mouth. So you can see it's a really, really tight mouth. It is 3/16 of an inch wide by a little bit fatter than this blade. I have about a 1/16 inch wider than this is. That'll give me a little bit of slop side to side. So now that I have that line on there for the front of the mouth, then I want to create the escapement cut. Now for the first little bit of the mouth, we don't want the mouth to be perfectly vertical here, so at 90 degrees to the surface. We want to have a little bit of space for the chips to curl. But we don't want to cut it at 45 degrees out this way, because if we cut that angle out this way, then as we flatten the sole, that mouth will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if it gets too big, that doesn't work very well for a smoothing plane. So I'm actually going to put it at an 80-degree angle. So rather than being 90, I'm going to slip it back about 10 degrees. So I'm going to put this nick right into the mark of the front of the mouth.
For some reason, I lost the footage of drawing the other 2 lines. They are fairly self-explanatory, but if you have questions, feel free to let me know.
So now I have the lines for the mouth. I have the lines here on the side for the different angles, for the bed, for the wedge, for the front escapement, and then I have all the lines on top for the material I'm going to remove. So now we can actually start hogging this out. I can take off the excess tape, makes it very clear and obvious I need to remove this material and not this material, and I'm going to be cutting in at the angles I can eyeball down here. So this is going to be the hard part. So this is one of the steps that you really can't do with a power tool, is carving these accurate angles at weird dimensions, tapering down to almost nothing at the bottom. I guess if you had a really, really small mortising chisel, you could set this at an angle and mortise down in, but I haven't seen anyone ever try to do that. That's why most of the time with power tools, what you do is you cut off this side and you cut off this side. You remove that with a saw, you laminate it back together, and you put a dowel pin in as opposed to a wedge locking mechanism here. The traditional method is to leave it as one block and just chisel out the waste. It's really not as difficult as it sounds. It takes a little bit more time, but once you're done, you have a solid block without any glue lines, and everything looks so much better. So we're going to actually go through how do we take out this material inside. Now this is the point at which a lot of people get bent out of shape, is, okay, how do I actually remove all this, because there are so many angles and wedges and shafts and different things you have to be careful not going too far, and how do you do this? And my biggest piece of advice is don't overthink it. If you were to be cutting a butterfly out, you'd take an auger bit and you'd remove most of your waste, and then you'd come in with the chisel and you'd clean it out close to your lines, and then you'd come in with the chisel a little closer, and then you'd come in and take it all the way down to the lines. And we're going to be doing basically the exact same thing with this. It's just rather than it being perfectly square like a butterfly, we're going to take the auger bit and we're going to eyeball it to match that angle. So I'm going to be eyeballing down the side and looking at that angle, making sure my auger bit's close to it, but I'm also going to be staying an 1/8 inch or more away from it. And then when I get out to this side, I'm going to drill a few of them here at the beginning, kind of this angle, and then when I come in here, then I'm going to match that angle way over here. So I'm going to take you through this kind of step by step and show you what I'm going to do to remove most of this material. For most of it, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch bit for the corners and getting close to things. This is a little easier to control. And then for the large majority, I'm going to use this 1/2 inch auger bit to remove the large chunks. So I'm just going to eyeball down that line and cut it. And I'm going to intentionally focus my angle a little bit further away from the line, because I can always come back and clean it up later with a chisel. But the closer I get it now, the less time I'm going to have to spend with a chisel. So just keep on going. Eyeball your lines. Make sure you're staying away from it. Try and keep things in line. Don't go too far. It's not that difficult. Then after doing the corners with the 1/4 inch bit, I'm going to come in with the 1/2 inch bit and remove most of the majority with this. So I'll start it in here kind of flat to the wood and then slowly raise it up until I get close to my angle. You can see I'm staying quite a long ways away from the tape. That's perfectly fine. I can always come back in and clean it up with a chisel. Then I can come in with a chisel, staying well away from the line. Just kind of chopping things out, cleaning them up a little bit. Work my way back to about a 1/16 or so away from the line, and I'm eyeballing down the chisel at that line. So right now, the line is over here, but my chisel angle is something more like this, so that I'm staying away from it as long as I can. So now I've removed a lot of the material from up at the nose. I'm not going to do anything more here. I'm not going to focus on it that much. I just kind of want to get a little bit of a void here. The next thing I want to do is bring it back here to the bed. I'm going to do the same thing but shooting down at the steeper angle. So on this side, I've got a lot bigger, heavier angle to shoot with. So I'm going to start with it way out here, get that lead screw in and cranking, and then I'm going to slowly raise this up until I get close to my angle, which is incredibly steep. Oop, I turned it too fast so you can see how it slipped out there. Just slowly raise it until you're matching that angle, and then drive on down. So now I'm going to come in with a chisel. I'm just going to occasionally be checking that line. Just want to take out the majority of the chunks. Always be thinking about wood grain and how things are running away. On here, the sides, just going to tap down in a little ways, staying about an 1/8 inch or more away from that wall. I don't want to hit it too hard and split this. I'm just creating a stop cut so I can come in and remove the waste in between. I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoy this part. This is where things start to come together and you get to have this carving sense. I love simple and easy carving. Just bevel down and chop out between those stop cuts, and then stop cut in some more. And we're just staying well away from lines. We don't want to get anywhere near any of the lines yet. We just want to chop in and remove the majority of the waste fairly quickly. Then back to it again. Stop cut, chop out, stop cut, chop out. Rinse and repeat the whole way down. So now you can see how we've removed the majority of the waste. And next thing I want to do is slowly be coming back on these sides. And I'm going to leave them a 1/16 or a hair away from the side. And I'm just eyeballing down it and cleaning them up. Taking everything back a little closer and a little closer. That's a little more than I want it to, but I love a sharp chisel and hard maple. Hard maple just curls beautifully. So we're going to take these sides back a little closer to this tape line, and then we can start coming in I'm going to start with this angle here, the front of the plane, and then come back and take out the bed angle. The bed angle is the most important because that's the one that the plane iron interacts with. So now that I've gotten this generally roughed out, I'm not worrying as much about the wedge slots yet. I'm just kind of making a general hole of where it will be. I'm going to then open this up, and I'm going to flip this over and go to the mouth. Now it's very important that all of these lines then line up with the mouth, but I have no idea where those are. Now the mouth is 3/16 inch wide by 2 1/16 inch. So I'm going to stay away from my line a little ways and chop in, just create a stop cut. You can always remove material, but you can't add it, so stay away from your lines as long as possible. Here I'm probably getting about a 32nd to a 64th away from the line. And you can see as I chop down, it moves back towards the line a little closer. One of the reasons why we want to stay away from it. And I'm not going down very deep at all, just one little light tap. That's all that's needed, because we don't want to mess up this. Now I'm going to come in with this tiny little chisel and remove that material. This one's a little on the dull side. So once I've chopped down a little ways, we're going to come back, rinse and repeat. Same thing as before. Stay away from that line, just one nice little chop down. And I want to be very careful as I get close to coming through on the other side. I don't want to blow out on the other side. So if I feel it getting soft, I'm going to stop and leave it alone. So here you can see how I've popped through. There isn't any material here and any material here. That's because I haven't cut those out yet. That's where the wedge escapement will go. But now I can grab the iron and we can see how it's right on the edge of fitting in there. I want to leave it as small as I can, and I'll come back and open it up a little bit larger a little later. But right now we're just staying away from that line as much as I can for right now. We're going to leave it alone, and we'll come back and file it out in a little bit. So next let's flip it over and bring things up close to that line. So now I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to clean this out a little bit, just so I can see a little bit better. Remove a lot of this material. And basically what I want to do now that I have that mouth in there, I want to draw a line from that point to this edge of the tape. So there you have it for rough cutting out the escapement. It's not that difficult if you break it down into steps and you take one step at a time and you think about each chip you're taking out. Is this chip a piece of wood that I want to remove, or is this piece taking it too far? And the more you can stay away from the lines, the easier it's going to be in the future. And the more often you do cuts like this, the more it just becomes a fairly simple process of removing what needs to be removed and not removing what doesn't need to be removed. With a chisel, it's just that simple. Now, if you would like to follow along with this and have all the measurements and plans, I have those on my website, so you can see that, link down in the description and up in the cards. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear that. If you want to see the quicker video where I built this all in about 15 minutes, you can see a link to that down in the description, as well as I will have a little more of artistic video coming out in the future. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to using this in the future and showing you all the rest of the steps. So you want to see that? Stay tuned for next time. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why I can keep putting out videos like this. If you'd like to help out with that, or suggest ideas, or become part of the in-group that is actually helping me choose some of these videos, feel free to check out more of that on Patreon. Also, you can subscribe to my channel here, or if you want to see some behind-the-scenes videos, I do have a second channel right up here. That's about it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day.